the news item you sent me to our listeners. Everyone thinks Bev Alc's dead, but we have an untapped cohort.
We can't get Gen Z to drink, but we can get raccoons. If raccoons are so eager to get into a liquor store, I'm going to put my hat on. I'm looking at myself. I'm like way too bald. So if we can get raccoons to get into a liquor store, to break into a liquor store and get drunk and pass out in the bathroom, then why can't we get Gen Z to do the same?
So good.
Gen Z they're kind of like raccoons.
They're basically raccoons. Is that a real picture? That picture is incredible.
It's real. That's a real story that came out of Wyatt. Put the story up right here.
Yeah.
When you edit this.
Okay, we got to read this. A masked burglar broke into a closed Virginia liquor store early on Saturday and hit the bottom shelf where the scotch and whiskey were stored. The suspect acted like an animal because, in fact, he's a raccoon. On Saturday morning, an employee at the Ashland area liquor store found raccoon passed out on the bathroom floor at the end of his drunken escapade. This is my favorite part.
So great.
Quote, I personally like raccoons, unquote, said Samantha Martin, an officer who works at the local animal control. They are funny little creatures. He fell through one of the ceiling... He fell through one of the ceiling tiles and went on
a frenzy.
On a full-blown rampage, drinking everything. Oh, God, it's so
good. He didn't care what the branding was. Or what was on TV, or he just indiscriminately grabbed whatever bottles were on the bottom shelf and just and then passed out in the bathroom. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that.
No,
monkeys getting drunk is a little bit funnier.
Yeah, well,
I have covered that before. There was a monkey that got loose in San Antonio and went into somebody's garage, and they had a beer fridge, and he went and drank all the beer out of the beer fridge and had to corner him. And that was a funny story as well.
Oh my God, that sounds dangerous.
It was a little bit dangerous, but still hilarious.
Only one person got their face ripped off, so.
Yeah, I don't fuck with monkeys, man.
No,
I see a monkey, I'm turning around because they love to rip guys' dicks off for some reason.
Oh my God.
I'm not in for that.
I'm not down with
Call
that.
Me,
that's not
crazy.
My bag.
Yeah, I mean, I love animals, but I'm not in for that. Ken Grossman.
I can't hear you here. Hold on a second. Let's see.
Oh my God, old man. I gotta push a button.
It's probably say hi really quick. I'm gonna stay out of your hair, but thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something about Ken Grossman, okay, before we get started, before we introduce him. When I was a young, struggling beer journalist, and I was struggling, trust me, this is the early 2000s, Ken Grossman invited me to California to the brewery, and he allowed me to make a beer. It was a wit beer. And not only did they make the beer that I designed, but they got it TABC approved and shipped to my local bar so that I could drink it. And it was called Shoemaker's Wit. And I will never forget that. And I got to, order it for all my friends. And it had a side thing that said Shoemaker's Wit, and it praised me for some reason. It was the best thing that's ever happened to me in the beer business. And that is no lie. When I have Ken Grossman on the podcast, it's like having a legend. it's not like having a legend. It is having a legend. And so, Jen, will you give Ken a proper introduction?
Amen to that. Absolutely. I'd like to welcome to BeerNet Radio Ken Grossman, a man who needs no introduction, but will do it anyway. Ken founded Sierra Nevada Brewing Company 45 years ago, this past November 15th, to be exact. It is now the third largest craft brewer in the United States, with breweries in Mills River, North Carolina, and Chico, California. Sierra Nevada Pale Ale is, of course, the most revered beer in American craft history. I mean, that's just a fact. While its newer icon and flagship, Hazy Little Thing, continues to post growth for the brewer, even as it approaches a decade of existence. Sierra Nevada is a generationally run brewer, with Ken's kids Sierra and Brian taking the helm. So welcome, Ken.
Well, thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. Well, I just want to get one in before Harry comes back. So your tag, the tagline for the brewery now, is very appropriately family owned, operated, and argued over. Do you guys argue a lot about beer in the Grossman family? I can't imagine. I want the dirty details.
We actually don't argue a lot about beer, but we are passionate about our company and our brand, and we have at times some spirited debating and going on. But I think everybody has the same intention of trying to do what's right for the company and what's right for the family. So it's a fun slogan, but it's not that truthful as far as there not being a lot of arguments.
Oh, that's boring. No, I'm just kidding. Well, I mean, it's pretty incredible that you do have the next generation coming into the brewery because, as you well know, there's a lot of craft brewers out there who would kill to get their kids to work in the industry, and they don't. So how did you do that? How did you get them to take on the family business?
Well, it wasn't so much that I made them take on the family business. It was really something that they all, on their own, chose to want to be involved with. So I think we never pushed that they had to be involved in the business. And both my son and daughter, who are involved in the business, did start out with different career paths. Brian actually at one point was going to get into law enforcement, and I guess had an epiphany and decided maybe the brewing business was a safer bet. And my daughter Sarah had studied health education and sort of migrated back to the brewery. But all three of my kids, I have another daughter, Carrie, who's between the two. All three of them have worked various jobs when they were in high school and into college, working at the brewery, and I think got exposed to the company. And actually, right now, I have the next generation. My oldest granddaughter, who's I just started college. She works part time in our laboratory in Chico as well. So we've got three generations now involved. So it's pretty fun.
Oh my gosh, that's so awesome. I have three sons. None of them are in the beer business, mainly because I started them as merchandisers at beer distributorships. And they were like, all right, we're done. I'm done. I'm done. This beer is heavy, as we all know.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's a great legacy. Can you, started in Chico, the craft beer business today in 2025 is just, boy, it's rough out there. And yet Sierra Nevada continues to hold its own. What do you attribute that
the beer
to?
business? Yeah, I mean, the beer business is challenging for everybody. So, small brewer, large brewer, importer, whatever. I mean, everybody's, I think, struggling through the same challenges in the industry. And, alcohol in general is not so much in favor these days. So I think we're all, challenged with the change in consumer. I think the current situation we're in hopefully will start to right itself a bit in the next year or two. We're looking forward to things stabilizing as far as the marketplace. COVID had an impact, I think, on the consumer in general, and certainly our economy today is playing a role. But the trends that were happening pre-COVID really got amplified, I think, after COVID or through COVID. We were already starting to see some softness in the industry and some challenges in the craft segment before going into COVID, but that really, sort of sped up the transition into where we are today. So we're hopeful, and we're minding our finances and really paying close attention to trying to keep the company healthy and in a good place to weather the current situation. But we do feel things will start to stabilize and hopefully turn around in the next year or two.
God bless. I I certainly hope so. We're feeling it here. Everybody's in the industry is feeling it. I feel like the younger consumer doesn't appreciate beer as a beverage of health and moderation, which it is. Like, I drink a Sierra Nevada every morning when I wake up, and look how good I look. Look at me. So yeah, I think
I think that's something that we need to do a better job of really showing how beer belongs and beer fits into a healthy lifestyle as well.
You mentioned, your granddaughter's working, you said, in the QC lab now?
Yep.
Do you ever talk to her about, what her generation, how they see Bev-Alc or?
Well, she's not 21 yet, so
Okay.
she is not a
she's not drinking.
Yeah, she's not a
Just to be clear.
Yes, an alcoholic beverage consumer. But certainly there's a lot of other younger people that we interface with, and I've got friends and family who are in their early 20s and 30s, and they certainly don't, I guess, go out and do the same sorts of things we did when we were in our 20s and 30s, as far as going to a restaurant or bar and hanging out and having a few drinks or after work, or there's less of that kind of socializing happening today, I think, than certainly a lot less than when I was doing it when I was in college. I don't know if it's just a generational thing, if it's a blip. It's a little hard to predict, what the future generations will do with their alcohol consumption. But certainly right now there is a bit of a slowdown in consumption, and some people are choosing not to drink at all. And our releasing non-alcoholic beer was something that I saw coming quite a few years off. I traveled to Europe a lot, and when I was in Spain, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, the amount of non-alc beers that were being consumed, and Germany as well. So I was wanting to launch a non-alc years ago, but we really didn't have the technology to do it safely. We didn't have a tunnel pasteurizer, and those non-alcoholic products are potentially prone to microbial infections and some potential pathogen concerns. So we didn't do it, although we dabbled with the concept quite a while ago, and then finally we pulled the trigger and put the infrastructure in to do it.
I think people maybe forget that ethanol is a antipathogen.
Yep.
And when you take the ethanol out, it's like milk, basically. Like it has to be pasteurized. It has to be very care, right?
It's a food product then. Yeah, I mean, you got different governmental entities involved in your business when you are producing non-alcoholic products.
Right.
Well, how big do you see that end of things getting? Because you guys are a large NA craft producer now with Trail Pass, but do you think it can get as big as it is a share over in Europe, which is what, 20% of the market?
Yeah, I don't see it. It's in some countries it's more than 10% of the beer market. I don't see those numbers in the U.S. at this point in time. I mean, maybe they would get there someday, but certainly I think it could be 5 or 8% of the beer market in this country. I mean, at least in the craft space, it's certainly with Athletic doing what they're doing, it's certainly a popular alternative to an alcoholic beer, and craft beers have more flavor, and so I think that's why they've done better than the average non-alcoholic beer. That was one of the things that my team, when I kept saying we should be making an NA, my team was like, well, it's only 1% of the market. Why should we be going after such a small segment? But in truth, I think as far as the craft consumer and the craft drinker, I think it's got a much greater potential than just the general alcoholic or general light lager kind of non-alcoholic beer.
Yeah, because it was. Are we really going after the O'Doul's drinker? Because that was the only
Right.
viable
They were just
non-NA beer at the time, and it was tiny, and it was just the grizzled old recovering alcoholic in the corner of the bar drinking an O'Doul's. And now it's acceptable to not be that person and drink, and zebra stripe it.
Yeah, I mean, again, when I was at restaurants in Germany at lunchtime, they were proudly displaying their 0.0 beer, showing they were a responsible, worker, not drinking 6 beers during lunch, which might have been, common 20, 30 years ago.
Sadly, it's over.
Yeah. These terrible generational changes. Gosh, no. No, but I mean, I guess that parlays into your can-do innovation and contract facility, right? Do you do some of the trail pass there, or?
We do all the trail pass there. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So that facility was something that I toyed with, just trying to figure out how to shoehorn in a pasteurizer into the main Chico campus. And we really didn't have the space to do it properly. And so it was, during COVID when I decided that, we needed to build capabilities to do things outside of the beer space. And that was sort of the genesis of Can Do. But a big part of that was, let's put in a proper pasteurizer, and let's put in a dedicated facility that allows us to do a non-beer product safely. And so that was, sort of the reason to do Can Do. And then the idea of doing some contract production was really a way to help offset the large cost of putting that facility in until we built brands ourselves that would utilize that facility fully. We decided it would make sense to pack other people's products, and also had the concept of, let's see if we can get some equity in some small startup companies by either investing cash or investing a lower rate to produce products for them in lieu of some equity. So that was really our thoughts going into building that facility. And we're still learning. It's got a lot of capabilities. It's got a lot of capacity. We've got a handful of outside customers, and we're doing our hop splash, the hop splash that's got fruit added to it. So that one needs to be pasteurized as well. So it's being produced there, as well as all the Trail Pass products currently.
Yeah.
We're just in the process of putting together a plan to bring non-alc production to North Carolina, putting in a pasteurizer out there as well. So that project's moving through our process right now.
Okay, interesting. Is that more just about efficient shipping? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, we ship refrigerated because we do think it protects the quality of our beer, and so it's quite expensive to ship from California to the East Coast and around the country. So having a second production point really makes sense.
Are you saying that beer is heavy and expensive to ship across the Rocky Mountains? Because
Harry, I've used your quote repeatedly over the years, that beer is heavy. Yes, that beer is heavy, and we were going back to probably 2000, well, maybe around 2000, we started to get real concerned when we get fuel tariffs and fuel prices would spike. Some of the beers we were producing in Chico and shipping to your great state of Texas, it would cost us as much to ship it as all of our profit. And we would see that this makes no sense to have a long-term strategy with a single plant on the West Coast supplying the whole U.S. So it was part of our early thinking that, yes, beer is heavy and we need to figure out a way to economically get it around the country. And we're focused on conserving resources, and so the energy required to truck beer around the country too was part of our thinking of building a second facility.
Beautiful. I mean, I have visited both facilities. They're both beautifully rendered, but also I want to circle back to your point about energy. and that these breweries, you don't really talk about it a lot, but the sustainability of these breweries is amazing. What you've done about energy conservation. Can you talk about a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we've always had the philosophy of walking the talk and not necessarily talking about it. So for us, going back even to when we founded the company, I didn't have any money and I didn't have any resources, and so conserving dollars was really a big focus of us. And I started putting in energy storage systems back in 1982. I put in a big ice builder to store ice during the night when power was available and cheaper, and allow us to cool work during the daytime without having to run big compressors during the peak time of the day. So I started doing some of that early on. And then when we built the 20th Street facility starting in the late 80s, tried to incorporate as much of that stuff as I could afford with high efficiency motors and best in class lighting and things like that to save energy. And then as we expanded in 97 and built our large expansion in Chico, I started to really get concerned about energy consumption and water usage. And so we started putting in a lot of systems starting back then. We put in a large solar array, 500 kilowatts, and then we decided that wasn't enough. Let's see if we can get almost all of our power generated on site. So we put in over 2 megawatts of solar. We had at one time the largest solar array of any privately owned company in the country, with more than 10,000 solar panels in the Chico facility. And so we've just sort of doubled down when we built North Carolina. We were going for initially a LEED silver designation for that facility. And then we got close enough. We figured, well, we can get a gold designation. That's great. And then as we were towards the middle of the project, we're like, what will it take to get platinum, which is the highest level you can get. And so we invested the money and really built that facility both as a show place that you can build a beautiful and functional and energy efficient facility. So it's I think the only LEED platinum brewery in the country, production brewery. So we're proud of that, and we've continued to keep our focus on trying to make beer as sustainably as possible, and both from as a manufacturer who uses a lot of resources, I feel an obligation that it's something we should be trying to do as we run our company in the future, is figure out how to be as efficient as we can.
I remember this is in the late 90s, and I remember you did an interview with Peter Reed at Modern Brewery Age, and you were like, I hope we can get to 100,000 barrels. Like, that would be incredible. And then, like a year later, you did it. And I mean, did you ever, when you started the brewery back in the late 80s, think that you would be as big as you are now?
Absolutely not. I mean, if you looked at my business plan, I mean, the business plan was we're going to start with 2,500 barrels a year. And if we're really successful, we'll expand to 3,500. And that was the extent of our business plan. I thought you were going to, and I don't remember what interview it was, but I did an interview sometime in the mid 80s or late 80s where I said, if I could ever get to 10,000 barrels. So I thought you were going to bring that one up, because I was really thinking big back then. If we could grow to 10,000 barrels, that'd be amazing. And then when I designed and built the 20th Street facility, I did another business plan. And at that point, I was looking at Anchor, I think was about 35,000 barrels, maybe a year. And so I designed that brewery to be expandable up to 60,000 barrels, which I thought was just a huge leap of faith that we could ever grow to 60,000 barrels. But thought, well, let's put in the infrastructure and see if we can get there. And we got to 60,000 barrels in a few years after building that facility. So no, I had absolutely no clue. I didn't expect there to be 9 or 10,000 breweries in this country either. When we started in 1980, there were 43. If you look at Brewers Digest, 43 brewing companies in the United States, and that included the 6 of us who opened between 1977 with New Albion and DeBacher and River City and Boulder and the six of us. So such a different landscape, and just seeing, that evolve so rapidly. I mean, those six breweries changed. Some went out of business, more came. So those first early 80s were a lot of turmoil and a lot of struggles. And they got sorted out pretty quickly that, there were brewers who could figure out how to get by and on a shoestring and make a living, and those who just didn't have the drive or the resources to continue on. So there were a lot of casualties in those early years.
It was an interesting time. I remember, Jim Cook saying, there are brewers that are making beer, and there are brewers that are just science experiments.
Mm-hmm.
And in the late 90s, you remember, I mean, there was kind of a fallout and a kind of a culling of brewers who made good beer and those that didn't. And that was a pivotal time. And Jen, I'm sorry I'm hogging the mic because I'm a fanboy, but you can ask the next question. But my question is, do you have any, like when you think back on your long career, do you have any regrets? Is there one thing that sticks out that maybe you wish you hadn't done? Because I know in my career I have a dozen.
I got way more than a dozen. But no, I mean, overall, I've made plenty of mistakes, and I guess thankfully my mistakes weren't bad enough to tank the company or tank me. So no, there were regrets along the way. But as far as just the overall trajectory of the company, we've been pretty conservative. I think in part why we're still around is I was watching Paul Shipman and all these brewers that got over their skis and took in venture money, took in investors. I mean, all those guys are out, sort of exited the business with really not very much. And I was watching them, go public and do all these things to try to compete and grow the companies quickly. And we were just like, well, that's, be way easier. I remember looking at contract brewing back when we were in the, I guess, late 80s, running out of capacity. And we, internally debated it. If we did that, we would sort of be selling our soul. We'd be going down a path that we couldn't, necessarily recover from. And so we really resisted growth by any means. We really focused on growing based on the demand and cash flow that we had available. I mean, early on, no bank would loan us a penny. And so we couldn't grow by borrowing a bunch of money, which thankfully probably kept us in business versus some of our peers.
Well, I mean,
were able to borrow money.
Yeah, because you bought a bank.
No, I didn't buy a bank.
Nobody would
start a bank.
No one would lend you money, so you just bought the bank. I mean, I don't know. I heard that somewhere. Maybe that's not true.
No, not quite, but no.
Okay.
And that was many years later, and I didn't buy the bank. I was an investor in the startup bank in Chico. But no, the fact that we were so cash poor did, I think, create a lot of resilience in us that we just figured out how to do without. And I think it made us, a little more innovative and more creative, and problem solving became, a real art and science. So, we would tackle things without resources and figure out how to, convert something or build something or do without. So, I think those early years of not having resources did help sharpen our ability to survive when things got tough.
Yeah, and that's a perfect parlay or segue into, things right now are, pardon the pun, but a little hazy, right? The outlook for the industry is a little hazy. So how are you guys managing that uncertainty now?
We're highly focused on it, and we've I've got a Price Greenhow as our CEO, so I've stepped back, and I'm happily enjoying being retired. So I'm working a little bit. I had a meeting with Price this morning. We get together every week and talk about the business and Our team is highly focused on, looking at how to be more efficient. So some of the areas that we're drilling down on, both on the supply chain, having how to buy smarter, how to procure as cost effectively as possible. But on the operations side, we're very focused on waste and plant utilization and efficiency, and so our teams have done a lot in that area. Maybe times like this are good for one thing, and that's sort of sharpening your focus on how to operate efficiently. So our teams have saved quite a bit of resources by that focus. Not getting not losing focus, I think, is another thing that we're focused on, is not having too many distractions. And so, with all the turmoil in the industry, we're certainly getting approached by a lot of brewers that are challenged and struggling and would love to partner with a company like us. And we'll look at some of those opportunities, but in the end, it really doesn't make sense for us to take on another challenged brand or struggling company that needs resources. We've got enough of our own things to deal with and focus on, that really, sticking to our knitting has really been one of our focuses as well. And then trying to look at where the drinker is going, and trying to make sure that we're both on the beer side, and we're looking beyond beer as well, but where we need to be thinking in the future to be relevant with the changing consumer. So the team's focus, we're working as hard as we can to sell beer, but also to make sure that we've got financial resources to weather the current situation.
Yeah, and this is the point in the conversation where, of course, I have to ask if you guys ever look at hemp THC, intoxicating hemp, since we're talking about beyond beer.
We certainly do, and we have, and it's something that we're continuing to look at. Waiting for some clarity on the federal side before we do too much. But part of the Can Do facility, that was one of the products that was planned to be produced in that facility. Okay. And we have not yet, and due to California banning the hemp-derived THC, that sort of changed our plans pretty quickly. So we're just right now sitting and waiting, and hopefully there'll be some clarity with legislation coming up in the next, hopefully soon.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned Price a little bit ago, and I have to say, between Price and Ellie Preslar and Joe Whitney before her, I mean, just really upstanding, great, visionary people, right, leading the company. How do you hire? What do you look for in your leaders?
Well, I'll start with Joe, because he was the first one of that group that we did hire, and he's happily retired and fishing and skiing right now, so he's doing well after beer. Joe was an interesting one, because we were looking for really the next sales leader, and we interviewed a lot of people, and didn't really find a great fit. And then Joe actually reached out to me and said, if you haven't found anybody yet, he was at New Belgium at the time. If you haven't found anybody yet, let's talk. And so Joe actually on his own came to Chico, and we hit it off. He had that long industry knowledge, starting at Boston, and he was a super sharp guy, and very connected to the marketplace and the consumer, and so it just seemed like a really great fit. And he built us from, I think when he joined, we might have had 12 or 15 salespeople, and oh, wow. Yeah, it was really a small sales force. It could have been a little more than that, but it wasn't a lot more than that. And then he said, you guys really need to focus on sales. And up to that point, Steve Harrison, who had been one of my the first employee I hired back in 1980, and had been a high school friend, he had the philosophy, and we were growing enough that if we didn't need to spend money, he was very frugal, which again allowed us, I think, to survive those early years. And the brand just sort of had its own momentum in the 80s and into the 90s. That was, great. We didn't really, seed the Grateful Dead, who were big followers of our beer, and their fans were big followers of our beer, and things like that were just happening to us. We didn't really push any of that. It was a great time for us anyway. The rest of the industry was maybe a little more challenged, but for whatever reason, our brands resonated, and Pale Ale was a well received craft beer. It was, we think, very well balanced and really appealed to an increasingly knowledgeable consumer who was understanding craft beer, and so we had this momentum going, and Joe was we started to business sort of slowed down a little, and Joe realized you guys needed to invest to continue the company's trajectory. So he really sort of changed the philosophy of the company a bit more to being sales focused rather than just production focused. And up until that point, I had just been doing my job, was making beer, and it was selling really well on its own. But I realized times were changing, and we did need to pivot the company. So Joe was the first hire. It was a good chemistry, and he had I think a good vision on how to take the company to the next level. And then Ellie and Price, we look at chemistry. Certainly, we look at skills and knowledge, but just making sure that the chemistry is right. When we hired both Ellie and Price, it was really just seemed like a good fit for their knowledge, enthusiasm, skill, and then the ability that we thought we could all work together. And I think that's important.
Yeah, I mean, all those people you just mentioned they're just good people. Like you can just tell by meeting them. Joe has charisma just out the door. And I remember those times because it was Boston Beer and Sierra Nevada, who were, the two top craft brewers. And Boston Beer had 100 salespeople, and y'all had 12. It was amazing how you were able to capture the imagination of the craft beer drinker across the country without a sales force. It was incredible. I remember it, and I remember writing about it. I was like, how did they do? The beer speaks for itself, obviously.
I don't have an answer for you, but yeah, matter of fact, I got some calls from I won't say which brewery owner, but a call from another pretty good sized brewery owner saying, how do you do it? And they had the same question. I was like, I really don't know. It just, the brand's doing it on its own. We came up with a good product and a good package and feel to the brand. So it really clicked well in those early years.
Yeah, and the beer traveled well because it fermented in the glass and
bottle conditioned. Yep, and
bottle conditioned.
We were very quality focused, even from our earliest days, and so I think having consistent beer certainly helps. The consumer could expect to get the same beer, bottle after bottle, and that was something we really prided ourselves on.
Unbelievable.
Well, Sierra Pale obviously is super iconic, and I'm sure you're tired of answering this question, but I'll ask you to be Taylor Swift and play the hits one more time. What has allowed Sierra Pale to be, such an icon for as long as it's been? I mean, obviously the quality, but what else?
I think, and I was just asked this question recently, other, of our peers have reformulated numerous time and significant package changes, and it hasn't necessarily turned their flagships around. And for us, we worked hard at getting a very drinkable, balanced, but highly flavorful beer from day one. And you probably read, I dumped 10 batches of pale ale the first few months that we were brewing, just because we weren't able to consistently make the same beer batch after batch. And so, for us, getting balance and getting flavor was really the key to trying to get the pale ale where it would appeal to a craft drinker, but also appeal to somebody who's just coming off of being a light lager drinker. So trying to find that balance. Early on, though, it was a very small segment of the beer drinking public would appreciate the hoppiness of our pale ale. But I think as people warmed up to it, got used to hops, and got to really love hops, we developed a pretty strong following. And the beer really doesn't need to be changed. We still love it. When I'm traveling out of the area and I come back and have a pale ale, it's like, wow, yeah, that is really a great beer. I go to Europe and drink beers and love many of the beers over there as well. But coming home to a pale ale is always a great thing.
Damn right.
Yeah.
If you asked 100 brewers, if you had to go to a deserted island and you can only have one beer, 90 of them would say Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. I mean, it's the goat. It's the goat. Am I kissing ass too much? I mean, I just Ken Grossman, you're a gem to this industry. You're a jewel. And I will always say that. I always have admired you. And you've always been good to me when I was just starting out. And I really appreciate it. And there's nothing. Can anybody say anything bad about Sierra Nevada?
Well, that's a great question. I don't think so.
No. And I can say things about every craft brewer that pisses me off. Trust me. And I have. But anyway.
Why aren't they more Sierra-y? Damn it. Well, so Jordan couldn't be here with us today, but I do have 3 very excellent questions that he sent along. And this first one is very interesting. Apparently, you have done or did the Death Ride, which is a very sort of infamous, treacherous biking excursion, dangerous biking excursion. And you brought along some coworkers as well. Can Harry tag along on his one wheel? Would that be possible?
I don't think so. I don't think they allow motorized or electric bikes on that.
Sadly.
No, are you a one-wheel rider?
I am. I broke my hip this time last year on my one wheel, and I still ride it. I get right back on like a horse that throws you off. And yes, I don't.
Okay,
I have a YouTube. I have a separate YouTube channel devoted to my one wheeling, and I'm kind of known as the old man one wheeler, and it's an identity I embrace, and I'm out there on a one wheel.
Okay, so I won't invite you on the Death Ride because I don't think that would work. But there is a trail that I ride in Mendocino County area. That's called Observatory Trail, and there's a group of one-wheelers who ride that. And it's
I know about that trail.
Do you really?
I know about that trail. Yeah, and I'm not qualified.
I was going to say, what did we just do?
I ride clean streets.
Oh, okay.
Very flat. But I want to hear about the Death Ride and how many times you've done it, and how many employees you've taken with you too. I would never make it out alive ever.
Well, here's the story. So I wrote it the first time. I challenged my son, and at that point in time, his fiance at the time, to do it. So that was, I don't know, 20 years or so ago. And so we wrote it together. We all 3 of us made the whole ride, 140 miles or 130 some miles plus 15,000 feet of climbing. And I did it a second time where I wasn't nearly as fit, and I suffered immensely. But we filmed a little bit of it at the brewery, before the brewery, and then we were having, as we are now, a challenging time in the industry. About 6 or 7 years ago, and I talked about grit at one of our town halls. So I used to do quarterly town hall meetings with all the employees, and I didn't really challenge the employees to do the Death Ride, but I showed pictures and I asked for a show of hands how many people think they could accomplish this ride, and I had a spattering of hands stick up, and I said, no, I think all of you could probably do it, but it's really a mindset, and it's a training and a focus thing. And I was trying to emphasize that, there's tough things that a lot of people think they can't do, but if they really work at it, they can do it. And so After that town hall, I had about 10 people, 10 of my employees come and said, I'll ride the death ride if you ride the death ride. Sort of challenged me to a third time. So Jeff White was CEO at the time, and we trained together with a group of us, and about I think 10 or 11 started out. I think almost everybody finished
Wow.
the ride. So yeah, it was one of those pretty fun challenges in the company. And again, there's a video on YouTube. Actually, you can watch us do the death ride, or me and some of my staff anyway.
Yeah, no, I saw it. It's really incredible, and obviously, kind of as you hinted, it's kind of a metaphor for entrepreneurship, right? Like you just do it, and you
Yeah.
have a certain mindset, right? Like you're just built differently, so it's pretty impressive.
But Jen, I think you could do it.
I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah. No question, you could make it.
Interesting. Maybe one day. One day.
Jen hasn't aged. Jen has worked at this company for what, 11 years, 12 years?
15 years.
Okay, 15 years. And you look exactly the same as the
Well,
day I hired you. Those are facts.
It's all the formaldehyde I'm drinking, That's my secret. It's out now. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Next one from Jordan. Another good one. If 1980 Ken walked into Sierra Nevada today, what would surprise him most?
Whoa. I'd be floored. Yeah, just 1980 Ken with the primitive home-built little brewery, which, by the way, we still have. We still have all that equipment I built back in the late 70s. Yeah, I wouldn't know what this. I'd be speechless. Just where the industry was when I started to where it is today, and just the evolution of craft brewing and small brewing in America from the low point in 1980 to where it is today. It's just a pretty amazing thing.
It is. I mean, I remember in 2013, 2014 or so. I mean, Olivia Wilde was making movies about craft beer, right?
Mhm.
That's how big it got in the zeitgeist. And then last one from Jordan. Do you have the time now to stop and marvel at what you've built and the beers you've crafted?
Yeah, I don't know if marvel's the right word, but yeah, I certainly reflect on sort of where we've been and where we are today. And I try to the day-to-day challenges and struggles are always forefront, but now that I've backed away a bit, and I'm less involved in a lot of the daily challenges, just looking at where the company's at and what we've been able to achieve in 45 short years is pretty great. So yeah, it's fun to look back and think about those early years when I turned a vacuum cleaner into a malt handling system because I didn't have anything else to bring malt up from the malt house and back, and those kinds of things that were totally MacGyvered together, but got us to where we are today.
I think don't you have sort of a haul of all of your gadgets at one of the breweries from all over the years, or am I misappropriating a story that I've heard?
Yeah, we don't have a hall of gadgets, but we do. The North Carolina brewery is set up very much for touring, and there's a lot
Mhm.
of brewing history stuff in the halls in that brewery.
Cool.
Man, engineering is your kind of superpower. And the way you engineered that brewery in Chico originally was amazing. I remember it. I was there.
Did you go to the original brewery? Were you there in the late 80s or not?
No, but I was there
Okay.
in the mid 90s.
Okay. Yeah. So we were still fairly small in the mid 90s.
Yeah.
I hadn't done the 97 expansion was a really big one where we more than doubled the capacity of that plant, and um, through a massive party with the manufacturer of the brewing equipment sent a butcher over from Germany to prepare suckling pigs
Oh,
and all sorts of traditional German things. And like we had, I don't know how many people there, close to 1,000, I think, throughout a couple of days worth of partying. So yeah, it was a pretty big
Well,
event.
I was the craft and import manager at Houston Distributing in the mid 90s. And I was like, hey, I think we need to take a look at this California brewery. And, I think y'all were with Glazers or somebody at the time. And I was like, I think we need to get the Miller Network in. And then they ended up purchasing the rights. And that's when I went to Chico, to see to report back to the owner. I was like, we need this brand. And it opened the gates for, at least in Texas. And then they took on New Belgium and, everybody else, Boston and so forth. And, not that I was a catalyst, but I was early in. I was early in because I knew. Harry knows.
And now he drinks pale for breakfast every morning.
Every morning.
So
with my eggs.
Yeah.
So,
that's interesting.
well, thank you so much. Thank you, Ken, for being on our little podcast. It's truly an honor, as you know. I'm a fanboy. I've always admired you, and it's just.
I'm trying to think. We hung out together somewhere in Texas. Was it San Antonio, maybe?
Well, that's where I live, so that's likely. Yes.
Yeah. I remember. Seeing you in your home turf.
Yep. Oh yeah, we've hung out. You've seen various girlfriends come and go. You've seen it all, Ken, and we'll just let that go.
Let that lie.
We'll let that lie. Yeah. But anyway, thank you for being on BeerNet Radio, and I look forward to seeing you again. And we'll have a beer.
Sounds great. Can't wait.
Thank you.
All right,
Ken.
guys.
Well, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ashley. Also.
Thank you, Ashley.
Cheers.